The sun rose slowly over the wide-open ranch, painting the fields in soft gold. The morning wind moved gently across the grass and carried the fresh smell of earth. This ranch had always been a calm place, and every new day began with the same peaceful rhythm. It was the kind of land where a person could hear the soft sound of animals breathing and the distant call of birds without any disturbance. For Rahil, the lone cowboy who lived here, this peace was part of his life. He had grown used to quiet mornings, long days of work, and nights filled with the calm voice of nature. Rahil stepped out of his small wooden house with a cup of warm tea in his hand. He liked to start his day by walking around the ranch. It helped him think clearly and understand what needed to be done. He looked at the sky, then at the animals resting near the fence. Everything looked normal, and he expected the day to be like any other. But when he walked toward the main gate, he noticed something strange. There was a large shape sitting near the entrance. At first he thought it might be a wandering calf or maybe a sack of supplies someone left behind. The ranch gate sometimes received unexpected things from travelers who passed by. Rahil did not feel worried, but he did feel curious, so he moved closer. As he approached, the shape slowly lifted its head. Rahil stopped for a moment. It was not a calf or anything he had guessed. It was a giant dog, much bigger than any dog he had ever seen on the ranch. The dog had thick fur that looked dusty, as if it had been walking for a long time. Its ears were lowered, and its eyes held a tired look, almost like a traveler who had reached the end of a long difficult journey. The dog did not bark or growl. It simply watched Rahil with calm, sad eyes. Those eyes were the first thing that touched Rahil's heart. There was no fear in them. No anger. Only quiet sadness, mixed with something that looked like hope. Rahil slowly walked closer. The dog stayed still, not moving even an inch. It sat near the gate with a straight posture, like it had been told to stay there. Rahil noticed something else beside the dog. A small piece of folded paper lay under a stone. The breeze tried to lift it, but the stone kept it in place. He came close enough to see the dog clearly. Its fur had marks of long travel. There were small pieces of dry grass stuck to its tail, and its paws looked a little tired. This was not a dog from the nearby area. Someone had brought it here. Rahil bent down to pick up the paper. He felt a strange heaviness in his chest as he touched the note. The paper was not old. It was clean, meaning someone had written it recently. The handwriting on it was simple and hurried, like the writer was stressed or sad while writing. The note said only one short message. "I cannot care for him anymore. Please keep him safe. His name is Boru." Rahil stared at the words for a long moment. They were simple words, but they carried a deep meaning. The writer had not shared their name. No reason was given. No explanation. Only a request and a name. He looked at the dog again. The dog looked back. Its face showed quiet acceptance. It was almost as if the dog understood that it had been left here on purpose. There was something heartbreaking about that. Rahil felt a sudden warmth rise inside him. He was not a person who cried easily, but the message touched him more than he expected. Someone out there had loved this dog enough to bring him to a place they believed was safe. Someone had trusted Rahil's ranch. Someone had trusted him. He slowly reached out his hand toward the dog. The dog did not step back. Instead, it leaned forward a little and sniffed Rahil's hand. Then it pressed its large nose gently against his palm. The touch was warm, soft, and full of silent emotion. It was the kind of moment that felt quiet on the outside but heavy on the inside. Rahil let out a slow breath. In that simple touch, something changed. It felt as if the giant dog had accepted him. And without speaking a word, Rahil accepted the dog. "You are safe here," Rahil said softly. Boru, the giant dog, lifted his head and looked at Rahil with a trusting expression. His tail moved once, slow but full of meaning. It was a small sign, but it was enough for Rahil to know that the dog understood. Rahil opened the gate wider and stepped aside. Boru stood up and walked inside the ranch without hesitation. His steps were heavy but steady. The moment he crossed the gate felt like a new chapter beginning, one neither of them expected. Rahil walked beside him. He did not know anything about Boru's past, but he could see that the dog had been through something difficult. There were no visible injuries, but there was an emotional weight in the way Boru moved. The dog was careful, quiet, and observant. The ranch animals watched the newcomer with curiosity. The horses lifted their heads, and the goats paused their grazing. Boru looked at them but stayed calm. Rahil appreciated that. A gentle dog was easier to help and understand. He guided Boru to a shaded area near the barn, where the ground was soft and cool. Boru sat down with a sigh, as if he had been waiting for a place to rest for a long time. Rahil sat beside him, reading the note again. The short message kept echoing in his mind. It felt incomplete. It felt like there was a bigger story hiding behind those few words. But Rahil did not rush. He believed that every story revealed itself in time. For now, he had a new responsibility. A large, gentle dog who needed care, comfort, and trust. The ranch, which had always been calm and predictable, now held something new. Something unexpected. Rahil did not know what the coming days would bring, but he had a feeling that this dog had arrived for a reason. The sun was higher now. The morning had turned into a new beginning. And the story of Rahil and Boru had just begun. The next morning on the ranch began with soft light rising over the wide fields. Rahil stepped out of his house earlier than usual. He wanted to check on Boru before doing anything else. The giant dog had slept in the shaded corner near the barn, where the ground was cool and comfortable. Rahil had placed water and some food there before nightfall. He hoped Boru had eaten, because the dog looked tired and underfed. As Rahil approached the barn, he found Boru sitting calmly and watching the sunrise. The dog looked peaceful, but there was still a shadow of sadness in his eyes. It was clear that Boru was trying to adjust to this new place. Rahil walked closer and sat down near him. The dog turned his head and gave a slow tail wag that felt like a small greeting. "Good morning, friend," Rahil said in a gentle voice. The dog did not bark. Instead, he pressed his head lightly against Rahil's arm, showing trust in a quiet way. This simple gesture filled Rahil with warmth. He felt responsible for this animal, and he wanted to do everything he could to help him feel safe. Boru ate the food Rahil gave him without any hesitation. His appetite was strong, which was a good sign. After finishing, he lifted his head and looked around the ranch with curiosity. Rahil realized that Boru was trying to understand his new surroundings. The ranch was a peaceful place, but to a dog abandoned at a gate, even peace could feel unfamiliar. Rahil decided to walk with Boru around the ranch so he could get used to it. When Rahil stood up, Boru rose too, instantly matching his steps. It was as if the dog had already accepted Rahil as his guide. They first visited the horses. The horses lifted their heads as Rahil and Boru approached. Some of them stepped back carefully, not sure how to react to the large dog. Boru stood still, showing no sign of aggression or excitement. His calm behavior impressed Rahil. It seemed Boru knew exactly how to act around other animals. After a few minutes, the horses became comfortable enough to drop their heads and return to eating. Boru gave a small sniff in the air, then looked at Rahil for direction. This quiet communication made Rahil smile. Next, they walked toward the open fields where the goats were grazing. The goats looked up when they saw the big dog, but Boru again stayed calm. He walked slowly and did not disturb them. Rahil felt proud. He had known many dogs in his life, but Boru carried a special kind of gentleness. After finishing the morning round, Rahil sat near the water tank and Boru sat beside him. The air was cool and refreshing. Rahil pulled the small note from his pocket. He read it again, even though he already knew every word. "I cannot care for him anymore. Please keep him safe. His name is Boru." The note felt heavier today. Rahil wondered about Boru's past. What had happened to the person who wrote this? Why did they leave Boru at the ranch gate? The note did not say. It had no details, no name, no explanation. Only a plea for safety. Rahil looked at Boru and said softly, "One day I will understand your story." Boru lay down beside Rahil, placing his large head on Rahil's foot. The simple act felt like trust growing stronger. The day continued with usual ranch work. Rahil needed to repair a loose fence in the far field, check the cattle, and move some hay to the barn. Boru followed him everywhere. The dog did not leave Rahil's side even for a moment. Whenever Rahil stopped, Boru sat beside him. Whenever Rahil walked, Boru walked with the same quiet pace. While repairing the fence, Rahil noticed how Boru observed every movement. The dog watched the tools, the broken wood, and the process of fixing. It was almost as if the dog was learning. At times, Boru placed his large paw on the ground beside Rahil as if offering silent company. By afternoon, the sun grew warm. Rahil wiped sweat from his forehead as he worked on moving hay. This job was tiring, but he noticed something unusual. Boru stood near him and gently pulled at the ropes attached to a hay bundle. The dog was trying to help. The sight made Rahil laugh softly. "You want to work too?" he asked. Boru wagged his tail and pulled again. The action was not strong enough to move the hay far, but it was full of effort and sincerity. Rahil felt touched by the dog's willingness. It was clear that Boru was not just a pet. He was a partner who wanted to be useful. By evening, the sky turned orange. The ranch looked peaceful under the warm colors of the setting sun. Rahil and Boru sat near the fence, watching the horizon. A quiet moment passed between them. Not a single sound disturbed the air. Rahil spoke again, not because he expected Boru to understand every word, but because speaking helped him understand his own feelings. "You were brought here for a reason. Someone believed this ranch was the right place for you. I do not know why they left you, but I promise you will be safe." Boru lifted his head and placed it gently on Rahil's knee. His eyes were soft, calm, and full of trust. The connection between them was now stronger than it had been in the morning. As the sky darkened, Rahil guided Boru back toward the house. He prepared a clean corner for the dog near the porch where the air was cool and the floor was dry. Boru lay down there and slowly closed his eyes. He looked peaceful, almost as if he finally felt at home. Before going inside, Rahil stood for a moment and watched him. The giant dog breathing softly in the quiet ranch night filled him with a deep sense of responsibility. This dog was not just a visitor. He was now part of Rahil's life, part of the ranch, part of the quiet mornings and long days. Rahil knew that the coming days would reveal more about Boru's past. He also knew that their bond would grow. The ranch, which had always been silent and predictable, now held a new purpose. Because Boru, abandoned at the gate with a short note, had found a new place to belong. The next few days passed with a quiet rhythm on the ranch. Rahil worked from morning to evening, and Boru stayed by his side the whole time. Their bond grew stronger with each passing hour. The giant dog watched every task with great interest, whether it was feeding the animals, repairing fences, or guiding the cattle toward the open field. It was clear that Boru was not just a watcher. He wanted to be part of everything. One morning, Rahil was preparing to check a distant water tank near the far hill. It was a long walk, and the weather was warm, but Boru followed him without hesitation. His steps were strong, even though his past still showed in his eyes like a quiet shadow. As they walked, Rahil noticed how Boru stayed alert. The dog looked around the field as if searching for something familiar. Sometimes he stopped and sniffed the air. Sometimes he turned suddenly as if expecting to see someone. Rahil did not interrupt, but he understood. Boru was carrying memories from his old life, and those memories were still fresh. When they reached the water tank, Rahil inspected the pipes and found a small leak. While he worked, Boru stood at a distance and watched the open horizon. His ears were raised. His tail was still. His entire body seemed to be listening to something far away. After a moment, he let out a soft sound. Not a bark. Not a cry. Just a gentle breath of longing. Rahil looked at him carefully. You are thinking about your past, he said softly. Boru turned his head and walked to Rahil. He pressed his large head against Rahil's shoulder, showing trust but also sadness. Rahil placed a hand on his fur. He felt the dog's quiet struggle. Boru was grateful to be safe, but he had not forgotten the person who left him. After repairing the leak, Rahil and Boru walked back to the ranch. The sun was shining brightly, and the field glowed under the warm light. But something unusual waited for them at the gate. A small truck stood near the entrance. A man in simple clothes stepped out and looked around the ranch with steady eyes. He seemed to be searching for someone. Rahil approached slowly. Boru walked beside him, though the dog's posture grew tense. The man looked harmless, but Boru's careful stance showed he was unsure. "Can I help you?" Rahil asked. The man turned with a friendly smile. "My name is Usman. I live in the nearby village. I heard you have a new dog here." Rahil hesitated for a moment. He wondered how this man had learned about Boru so quickly. The ranch was far from most homes, and visitors rarely came unless they had a reason. "Yes, he was left at the gate a few days ago," Rahil replied. Usman nodded slowly, as if confirming something he already suspected. "People in the village talk. Someone said a large dog was seen near this ranch. I thought it might be the one I heard about." Rahil studied the man's face. There was no harmful intent in his eyes. He seemed calm and sincere. "Do you know anything about him?" Rahil asked. The man let out a long breath. "I am not fully sure, but I might know his old owner." Boru stepped forward slightly. His ears rose. His eyes fixed on the man. There was no fear, but there was strong curiosity. Usman crouched a little, keeping a safe distance. "I have seen a dog like him before. A man named Hamid owned a giant dog. People said he trained the dog well. The dog was loyal, gentle, and brave. The type of dog you do not forget." Rahil's heart tightened. Finally, a clue. "Where is this Hamid now?" Rahil asked. Usman's expression turned sad. "Hamid fell sick many months ago. His health became weak. He lived alone after his wife passed away. Many villagers helped him, but his condition did not improve. Some said he worried the most about his dog. He loved that animal more than anything." Rahil felt the wind shift slightly as the story unfolded. Boru's past was beginning to take shape. Usman continued. Hamid was taken to the city for treatment. The journey was long, and he knew he could not take the dog with him. People say he cried while holding the dog's head before leaving. He asked someone to find a safe place for the dog. A place with open land and a kind person. Rahil's heart grew heavy. He remembered the note. He remembered the sadness in Boru's eyes. Now he understood the weight of that short message. "I cannot care for him anymore. Please keep him safe." The truth was painful but clear. Boru had not been abandoned out of neglect. He had been left out of love. Usman looked at Boru kindly. "If this is Hamid's dog, you have taken in a loyal friend. He will never forget kindness." Boru slowly walked toward Usman, sniffing him gently. The man smiled and touched the top of Boru's head. "You are a good dog. Your owner loved you very much." The moment felt heavy. Boru closed his eyes, leaning into the gentle touch as if remembering something warm from long ago. After a peaceful pause, Usman stood. "I should return to the village. If you ever need help, come find me." Rahil thanked him and watched the truck leave the ranch. The dust from the road rose for a moment and then faded into the air. He turned to Boru and knelt beside him. "Your owner cared about you. He wanted the best for you. That is why you came here." Boru lowered his head and leaned against Rahil. His tail moved slowly, carrying calm acceptance. For the first time since arriving at the ranch, the shadow of sadness in his eyes softened. The evening sky turned warm orange. Rahil and Boru walked together toward the barn. The ranch felt different now. It felt like it held not only peace but also purpose. Boru's past was no longer a mystery. It was a story of love, struggle, and sacrifice. And now, he had a new place to belong. Rahil gently patted the giant dog's back. "This is your home now." Boru lifted his head, eyes filled with trust. The past was behind him, and a new chapter had begun. The days after Usman's visit brought a new kind of peace to the ranch. Rahil now understood Boru's past, and knowing the truth made him feel even more protective of the giant dog. Every time he looked at Boru's calm eyes, he felt the responsibility left behind by the note. Boru's old owner had trusted him, even without meeting him. That trust was something Rahil carried in his heart every day. Boru adapted well to ranch life. He learned the morning routine, he followed Rahil during work, and he even found a favorite spot under a tall tree near the barn. From that place, he could see almost the entire ranch. It became his lookout point, a quiet place where he rested yet stayed alert. One morning, Rahil noticed something different in Boru's behavior. The dog stood near the fence, his nose lifted, sniffing the air. His ears were raised, and his body was slightly tense. Rahil placed his tools down and walked toward him. "What is it, friend?" he asked. Boru did not move his eyes from the distant field. He took a slow step forward, then looked back at Rahil as if trying to send a message. Rahil followed his gaze. At first, he saw nothing unusual, only the wide land stretching toward the small line of hills. But then he noticed movement. Something dark was shifting near the tall grass. It was too far to identify, but Boru sensed it clearly. Rahil placed a hand on Boru's back. "Let us see." They walked carefully toward the field. As they got closer, the movement became clearer. A wild animal, thin and hungry-looking, was crawling slowly through the grass. It seemed injured, or perhaps too weak to walk properly. Its eyes held a desperate look. Rahil stopped. He recognized the animal. It was a wild dog, not as large as Boru, but dangerous in its condition. Starvation often made wild animals unpredictable. Rahil knew he had to be cautious. Boru stood slightly in front of him, protecting him without being asked. His tail was straight, his body steady. He did not growl, but his posture showed courage. The wild dog saw them and hesitated. Its ribs were visible, its fur rough and dirty. It looked ready to run or attack, depending on what happened next. Rahil slowly raised his hands to show he meant no harm. But Boru stayed alert, ready to shield Rahil if anything went wrong. The wild dog took a few weak steps, then collapsed onto the ground. It did not move again except for shallow breaths. Rahil felt a wave of pity. The animal was not a threat anymore. It was simply suffering. Boru looked at Rahil, waiting for guidance. "We cannot leave it like this," Rahil said softly. He walked closer, very slowly. Boru followed but stayed between Rahil and the wild dog. When Rahil reached the animal, he knelt down. The dog looked up at him with tired, frightened eyes. It did not have the strength to run. Rahil spoke in a calm voice. "You are safe. We will help you." He fetched a small cart from the barn and used a thick blanket to lift the wild dog gently. Boru watched everything closely, making sure the animal did not harm Rahil. Once the dog was secured, Rahil pulled the cart toward a shaded area near the barn. The wild dog was weak, but it drank water when Rahil offered a shallow bowl. Rahil cleaned the dirt off its fur and checked for injuries. Boru lay beside them, watching with patience. There was no jealousy in his eyes, only understanding. "You are kind," Rahil said to Boru. "You know this dog needs help." Hours passed as Rahil cared for the wild dog. He gave it small portions of food to avoid overwhelming its weak body. Slowly, the animal started showing signs of improvement. Its breathing grew stronger, and its eyes became more alert. But Boru noticed something before Rahil did. The wild dog lifted its head and stared at Boru with a strange mix of fear and curiosity. Boru responded with calm, steady eyes, showing no threat. The two dogs exchanged a quiet understanding. They had both seen difficult times. By evening, the wild dog was strong enough to sit up. Rahil felt hopeful. He sat beside Boru and watched the wild dog rest. "I think we saved a life today," he said. Boru pressed his head gently against Rahil's arm. The next morning, the wild dog was able to walk a little. Rahil opened the gate to see if it wanted to leave. The dog took a few steps outside, looked back at Rahil and Boru, then walked slowly toward the open land. It paused once more, as if saying a silent thank you, then disappeared into the tall grass. Rahil watched it go. "Every life matters," he said softly. That night, rain clouds gathered over the ranch. A quiet storm began, filling the air with fresh coolness. Rahil stepped outside to secure the barn doors. Boru followed him closely. The wind grew stronger, and thunder rolled across the sky. The horses moved nervously, and the goats huddled together. Rahil worked quickly, but as he walked from the barn to the house, a sudden noise echoed through the fields. A loud crack, followed by a deep rumble. Something had fallen. Boru instantly ran toward the sound, barking for the first time since arriving at the ranch. His bark was deep and powerful. Rahil ran after him. When they reached the far edge of the ranch, they saw the problem. A large tree near the fence had fallen due to the storm. It had damaged the wooden posts and left a wide gap. If the cattle wandered here after sunrise, they could escape into the wild area. Rahil sighed heavily. "This will take a full day to repair." But as the rain continued to fall, Rahil noticed Boru's posture change again. The dog stood tall, his ears pointing toward the open field beyond the broken fence. Something in the darkness had caught his attention. "Not again," Rahil whispered. He followed Boru's gaze. A dark shape moved near the broken area. It was slow, silent, and large. It was not the same wild dog they rescued. This one was stronger, heavier, and very alert. Boru stepped forward, protective and fearless. Rahil felt his heart beat faster. Whatever waited in the dark was not friendly. The storm grew louder. The dark figure moved closer. And Rahil realized that the ranch was facing a danger far greater than a fallen tree. Boru stood ready, prepared to protect the land and his new family. The night was about to test them both. The storm grew stronger as the night deepened. Rain fell hard, and the wind moved through the broken fence like a wild river of air. Rahil stood near Boru, staring into the darkness where the large shape moved slowly. The thunder rolled again, lighting up the sky for a brief second. In that flash, Rahil saw the full size of the creature near the gap. It was a wild boar. A heavy, powerful animal with sharp tusks and strong legs. Wild boars often searched for food during storms because they believed the noise kept other animals away. But this one had come too close to the ranch. Rahil felt a wave of worry. A wild boar could injure cattle, damage crops, or even charge at humans if threatened. But Boru stood calmly, not stepping back, not trembling. His eyes were focused, steady, and ready. "Stay with me, Boru," Rahil said, though he knew Boru would never leave his side. The boar took a heavy step forward, its hooves sinking into the wet ground. It sniffed the air and let out a deep breath. The animal looked confused by the storm and the broken fence, but still aggressive. Rahil slowly moved behind Boru, trusting the dog's natural sense of danger. Boru stood between Rahil and the wild boar like a large shield made of bravery. The storm rumbled again. The boar lowered its head, a sign it was preparing to charge. Rahil whispered, "Easy, Boru. Hold your ground." Boru didn't move. His body was firm, his tail straight, his chest lifted. When the boar finally rushed forward, Boru barked loudly, a powerful sound that echoed through the storm. It was a warning bark, strong enough to make the boar pause for a second. In that brief moment, Boru stepped sideways, blocking the boar from entering the ranch. He didn't attack. He didn't step back. He simply held his place, using his size and courage to stop the animal. The boar shook its head and tried again. Once more Boru barked, deeper this time, showing he was not afraid. The boar hesitated again. It was not used to being challenged by something so large and confident. Rahil picked up a long wooden stick from the broken fence and banged it against the ground to create a loud noise. The boar looked at him, confused. Between Rahil's noise and Boru's fearless stance, the wild animal finally turned around. It moved slowly back into the dark field, away from the ranch. Rahil let out a long breath. Boru stayed alert until the boar was completely gone. Only then did he relax his posture. "You saved us," Rahil said, placing a hand on Boru's back. Boru pressed his head against Rahil's leg, almost as if saying he was only doing what his heart knew was right. With the danger gone, Rahil focused on the fallen tree and the broken fence. The storm continued, but he worked with determination. Boru stayed beside him the entire time, shining with quiet strength. The dog would pause sometimes, listening for unusual sounds, then return to Rahil's side when all seemed safe. By the time dawn arrived, the rain had stopped. The sky slowly brightened, revealing the land soaked in silver morning light. The ranch looked peaceful again, though the signs of the storm remained. Rahil leaned on the repaired fence, exhausted but relieved. Boru sat beside him, tired yet calm. The events of the night had brought them even closer. The dog had proven his loyalty not with force, but with courage and intelligence. Later that morning, as Rahil fed the animals, he noticed how the horses and goats behaved around Boru. They seemed more comfortable with him now. It was as if they understood he had protected them too. While walking to the barn, Rahil saw Usman riding his small motorbike toward the ranch. He waved and stopped near the gate. "I heard the storm was strong here," Usman said. "Is everything all right?" Rahil nodded. A tree fell on the fence, and a wild boar tried to enter the ranch. Usman looked surprised. "That is dangerous. How did you handle it?" Rahil looked at Boru with deep appreciation. "He handled it. He stood in front of the boar and protected everything here." Usman knelt and patted Boru gently. "You have strength and heart. Hamid would be proud of you." Boru closed his eyes softly, enjoying the comforting touch. Usman stayed for tea before heading back. Before leaving, he said, "It seems the ranch needed him as much as he needed the ranch." Rahil nodded. "I believe that." Days passed, and life returned to a calm pattern. But something had changed. Boru was no longer just a visitor or a dog left behind with a note. He had become the soul of the ranch. Every person who visited noticed the peaceful strength around him. Every animal trusted him. And Rahil found comfort in his steady presence. One warm afternoon, Rahil sat under Boru's favorite tree. Boru lay beside him, resting his head on Rahil's foot. The leaves above them danced gently with the wind. Rahil opened the small note again. He had read it many times, but today the words felt different. "I cannot care for him anymore. Please keep him safe." Rahil smiled softly. "You are safe," he said as he looked at Boru. "And you have made this place safer too." Boru lifted his head and gave a slow wag of his tail. His eyes were calm, filled with trust and belonging. Rahil continued, "This is your home. From now on, we protect this land together." The sun dipped toward the horizon, painting the sky with warm shades of orange. Boru stood up and looked across the fields. His posture was proud, strong, and peaceful. He had found his purpose again. He had found a family. As evening settled, Rahil and Boru walked toward the house. The ranch around them felt brighter, stronger, more alive. The quiet land, once empty and predictable, now held a story of loyalty, courage, and new beginnings. Boru, the giant dog left at the gate with a simple note, had become the heart of the ranch. And every sunrise that followed reminded Rahil of the night when courage stood against the storm, and a bond was written not in words, but in trust.